Okay, so the comrades and I are beginning to read The State and Revolution, an absolute must read, and I think it's going to really showcase itself in a new light to us, since we do have a little bit more experience applying the dialectical method nowadays. And I just wanted to add a little bit from the dialectics of the abstract and the concrete in Karl Marx's Capital to kind of showcase how we can apply this method to some other important works. And in the last chapter, which I keep on promoting of this book, Ilienkov reminds us that the surplus value is not just a sum of the parts of capital. It is not just the mechanical sum of the conditions. The labor force added to commodity production does not automatically mean there's going to be surplus value. These become their own organic reality, according to Ilienkov. He says they are going to start moving in a certain manner because of those inherent contradictions that they possess, and because of the other relations that happen in society. And that means that we cannot just look at something by looking at the parts and then apply the principle of the parts to the whole. Remember, the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts, and this is a very helpful phrase. And some of the same principles can be applied to some of the Lenin's initial statements about the state, and how he criticizes opportunists, the people who seize the moment and try to promote their own agenda, hiding behind socialist slogans. And of course, he hates on Kautsky, just like he does. And it is not just done for us to hate a certain person. It is for us to see the principles behind their behavior. And Lenin always insists that many of those opportunists, they did not necessarily have some ill intentions. They just misunderstood the dialectics. They misunderstood the method that Marx applied. Sometimes they did have ill intent. Sometimes they were misguided, etc. This is not what matters to us if we want to learn from history. What should matter to us instead is the principle behind their thinking. And I have been saying that for a long, long time, that fear is one of the driving forces of our behavior. This is our motivation. This is something that may mislead us if we do not deconstruct it, or if we do not analyze it, or if we do not look at the parts and then see the contradiction between the parts. But if we apply the same principles, that the state is not just the sum of its parts. Yes, according to Engels, as Lenin quotes him from the Origins of the Family, Private Property and the State emerged to resolve one of the main contradictions of the some of the budding societies of the past, where the class structure was creating that friction, and this contradiction was being created, the class contradiction, the class antagonism of the people who have the access to the means of production or the means of life, and the people who did not. And the government, the state, were supposed to be that arbiter of justice, right? They were supposed to be the seemingly neutral force that was going to sweep in and resolve this contradiction. But of course, it didn't. And we have a lot of historical data to prove this. And Marx insisted that the state is going to have to necessarily be overcome in order for us to achieve a classless society. But this isn't done overnight. This isn't something that Lenin insisted upon doing overnight. But he insisted upon the fact that if we do not understand the role of the state, if we see that it is something, it's almost like a little powder on top of a bleeding wound, we cannot resolve our issues using the state apparatus. It is only used as a means to forcefully, violently suppress one of the classes. So it's either or. And in the meanwhile, in the beginning of the emergence of the Soviet Union, it was necessary to suppress certain representatives of the bourgeois class. And the class war is going to continue way after the revolution. This is something to remember as well. but the state itself is an instrument, the means to an end. So to have a dictatorship of the proletariat does not mean we're going to have it forever on and on. So this is something to bear in mind, because a lot of people kind of go to statism or statism, and even though it's been discussed widely amongst Marxists for forever, it is important to remember that it is not just because we don't like the state and we don't want the state to be around, we're some kind of anarchists, etc. It is just because we apply the dialectical method and we see how the state was the same kind of a resolution of a contradiction as money in commodity exchange. In simple commodity exchange, if you remember, I talked about how, and this is what I repeat after Marx and Ilyenkov, money as a universal exchange was supposed to resolve that contradiction of the object commodity being two things at once and there being an inherent contradiction in this. Money was supposed to resolve this, but instead it masked that problem. It only made it appear less obvious, but it didn't resolve the ultimate alienation that is going to be caused by the commodity being necessarily these two things at once. And same goes to the state. The state is not able to resolve this ultimate antagonism, contradiction between classes. So the state will have to be gradually over time, but very purposefully and consciously overcome. It is not going to disappear on its own. It is going to be withered by the people themselves. Once we become the owners of the means of production, we will have to assume the responsibilities of the government or of the state. We will have to take it upon ourselves to actually perform the duties of the government, and it's only going to be a temporary measure. It is only going to be something that we do before the full collective of people all over the world achieves a certain level of development where we don't need to govern over anything, because we will be able to negotiate amongst ourselves concerning every single issue we have. But this is, of course, a conversation about possible utopias, which some people really love and some people really hate. But if you apply this very simple dialectical method, if your abstraction is correct, then you're going to be able to see how certain steps, certain agenda is not proposed by Marxists just because they like something or just because this is their desire. They see the mechanics behind it. And if you're interested, of course, go ahead and read The State and Revolution by Lenin. Highly, highly recommend. An amazing work that is pretty timeless. But of course, The Dialectics of the Abstract and the Concrete is another major, major work to read if you're interested in truly getting to know the revolutionary theory and to put it into practice. So let me know if you have any questions. I hope you have a great day today. Consider supporting me on Patreon. Do take care of yourself and your community first. Subscribe to me on all the other social media accounts, even though I don't do much there, and I'll talk to you sometime later.
Thank you.